9X1, I hope you're doing well and you're still keeping healthy and safe. So here we are, we're going to continue with our next English lesson based around the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. We've looked at 3 so far: The Telltale Heart, The Cask of Amontillado, and finally The Raven, though we're not quite finished with The Raven yet. You might question, why are we studying all these? Let me give you one example of how knowing a little bit about Poe might help you understand something that previously might have been incomprehensible.
Duster, I'm on dresser, but I'm making my Fortunato and seal this battle up like it was the cask of Amontillado.
I'm not suggesting that the main reason why we would study Edgar Allan Poe is so that you can better understand the jokes in an epic rap battle of history video off of YouTube. But it's worth noticing that the joke in that particular part is based on understanding the works of Edgar Allan Poe, specifically in this case, Cask of Amontillado. The joke is that the one rapper is Fortunato and that he's taking his vengeance out on the other rapper and he's burying him away, just like in the story, The Cask of Amontillado. This is called an intertextual reference. It's making a reference to another piece of literature, to a different text. And if you don't know that text, the joke just falls flat. It makes no sense. And in fact, this whole rap battle is filled with these kind of intertextual references to other works of horror fiction, but also just elements of pop culture, comic book references, and so on. We're going to return back to the works of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, what we're working towards here is a deep enough understanding of the 3 stories we've looked at so that we can make a comparison between them. And I'm not going to ask you to compare all 3, but you will be writing quite soon, as a form of assessment, a comparison between 2 of the texts that we've studied, where you're going to try and pick out a theme, one of the central ideas that the story is exploring, and see how that same theme is mapped or developed or explored across 2 of the texts. And you do that as a comparison. Why are we doing this? Well, first of all, you'll be asked to compare texts, admittedly non-fiction texts, but you'll be asked to do some comparison at GCSE. It's part of the English language GCSE, so starting to develop those skills now is a good idea. Secondly, a comparison forces you to look quite closely at 2 different texts, and that looking closely, picking out a theme, picking up quotes that support that theme, are core skills for what we do in English. So it's quite good that we do that as well. And finally, it will help you develop an understanding of how maybe an author, in this case Poe, might explore a couple of ideas through a number of different texts, and where those ideas might stay relatively the same, or where they might go off in very different directions depending on the type of story and how character and plot can influence all these ideas. Your work for today is going to be engaging with those themes of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, the core themes that you're looking at here are madness, obsession, memory, love, and loss. Now, you'll be looking at those themes across the 3 texts. And this worksheet here is to help you arrange your findings about these 3 stories. You can begin with The Telltale Heart. I've given you 3 quotes here. The opening quote of the story: "True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad?" And if you look at that, it's obvious that among the many themes, or more than one theme it may be connected to, we're looking at the very least at madness. I mean, it says, "Why will you say that I am mad?" But could there be a bit more going on there? And in here, I just want you to write down an explanation of how that quote might be exploring the theme. So you might write something like, reveals the madness of the narrator through the denial of madness. And that's fine. That's a beginning to what you could say. For those who are able to reach a little bit further, you might extend that by saying something like, suggests from the start, the narrator is unreliable. Can we trust what they say? You could even go further and extend that by saying, well, why couldn't we trust them? Can you trust a narrator who has to insist on their own sanity? And you can go even further, but I'll leave it at that for now. So for each one of these 3 quotes, you want to link it to one or multiple themes and have something to say about it. Okay? You might also pick out specific words. For example, the word dreadfully suggests. And then you might say, well, what does that suggest? What does it even mean? Right? You might look in the second quote where it says, for example, the death watches suggests, well, why that word death connected to watches, right? How does the adjective there, death, modify watch, and what is happening there? And then you pick a quote of your own as well. So you're doing 4 quotes, 3 of them are given to you, and you'll find one more quote of your own within the story. You'll do it again for the Cask of Amontillado, and you can see I've given you 4 quotes, so you don't have to find one of your own. This one, Nemo mi impune lacessit. My Latin is terrible, so I'm sure I pronounced that completely incorrectly. I wouldn't necessarily expect you to know what that means off the top of your head. Similar to the 4th quote here, the ending of the story, in pace requiescat. You may have to look both of those up, so use Google or your internet browser of choice, search engine of choice, find what it means, and then try and find a way to link it back to the story. How, again, might that be exploring a theme? And finally, we turn to the Raven. Now, this one I'm actually going to set for you as an extension. The work across the first 2 stories is already quite a bit for a single lesson, and I'll give you the week to complete it. But for those of you who want to push yourself a bit further, try and engage with the poem, which in some ways is a more difficult text. In other ways, I think is actually easier. But in this case, you might find that this works better for you, that you engage with the story of the Raven a little bit better. And if you find that for the future assessment that we're working towards, that you're going to want to work with the poem, then you're going to want to do this work today. So I've given you 3 quotes from the poem, and you can, of course, pick a 4th quote for yourself. So there you go. That is your lesson for today. This video, which hopefully has explained clearly enough your work, a quick skim through the 3 texts we've looked at, the Telltale Heart, the Cask of Amontillado, and the Raven, and in the worksheet where you're going to try and engage with the themes of these 3 stories. This is assembling your ideas together so that you're able to write about these themes in an assessment that will come quite soon, in which you'll be comparing the texts together. Now, for those of you who want to push yourself a little bit further, I suggest you go looking for a 4th text by Edgar Allan Poe, or a Gothic text by a different author, something that you could choose to compare with one of these 3 stories, but you're taking ownership of it. You're choosing the text that you'd want to look at. For today, you're focusing on Poe, but that would mean in the future you would be familiar with another text that you might want to work with. There's a wide range of Gothic short fiction out there. If you need some suggestions, I can make some for you, but it's better if you can go looking for a story of your own that you think you would like to write about. Now, next one, keep healthy, keep safe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.